plays Blizzard. Shady plays Blizzard. He is too while watching reboots with Shady plays Blizzard.
The hell? You know, even if I did have the time and skills to make a full theme song parody, I don't think I've established myself enough for it. Like, how am I gonna have a dozen things to rhyme with? I think I have to do this later down the road. But yeah, you might have remembered a few months ago, I covered Fairly Oddparents: A New Wish. But it was a pretty early look at the show, and only about 3 episodes released at the time that I wrote it. It was mostly just first impressions, but I was still optimistic on where the show would go from there, and that the first few episodes were pretty good. I was excited to see where this reboot / continuation of my childhood shows would go, and I was happy to see that it did turn out well from the start. And as I said, I do think it's kind of unfair how Fairly Oddparents has been treated. I feel people don't give enough respect to the earlier seasons, which had really tight writing, its episodic plots, and a great sense of cynical humor that wasn't like a lot of the shows at the time, and really gave it its identity. Like seriously, if you watch some of the prime episodes, you'll notice a lot of them hold up really well. But as we all know, the series took a decline after its kinda cancellation during season 6, after the introduction of Poof. With writing and plots that lost a lot of that smart, sharp humor and tightly written plots, and more evident Butch Hartman writing that has kind of become infamous in the animation community, which really hit its breaking point around season 9 where the show continued its track record by adding a fairy dog named Sparky that everyone except Nintendo hates, and getting even worse in the next season where the show introduced Chloe to share fairies with Timmy, and the show basically gave up not even bothering with a lot of the rules it sets up. So the show pretty much died with a whimper and its reputation got dragged through the mud with it. Though eventually the franchise would weirdly get a live action reboot, no, the other one though, those also sucked, where it became a crappy sitcom. Cause yeah, the show about fantastical wish fulfillment, able to do literally anything with its premise, was best done with the limits of real life and set designs. Needless to say, that was also a train wreck and became infamous as another blunder of the franchise, to the point where Paramount Plus removed it completely and no one really cared. So when A New Wish was announced, it made sense that the animation community would be wary. After all, Fairly Oddparents has become practically a joke at this point with how the franchise was ending up, even more with the controversies around its creator. Though, I was optimistic. I felt Fairly Oddparents was one of those perfect show premises that you could do literally anything with. So if you could make another reboot and do it right, it could save the franchise. It's not an idea that could only work once, as long as you recognize what went wrong and avoided it. Plus, with a new main character and eye-catching visuals, it seemed the franchise wasn't about to do the same old again and evolve itself. And a new jazzy theme song that almost rivals the first.
Oddparents, Fairly Oddparents, A New Wish, romantic hijinks.
Fish guy, pizza fries, Penny farted dirt bike ride, Gold Snoops, major whoop, periodic time loops.
And luckily it seems the optimism paid off, as New Wish really did bring new life back to the franchise, with fresh new ideas, charm, attitude, and overall enjoyment. And it seems many people also agree, as it looks like A New Wish has gotten a fairly decent following online. A lot of people have been enjoying it, and maybe even more than the original. I gave my thoughts when it first came out, but it was difficult to really get a good grasp on the show with only 3 episodes. I thought it was definitely a step in the right direction, with great new art direction, and a refreshing new change of pace and setup with a lot of charm and likability. But luckily the show had mostly continued the streak of quality, with many more enjoyable episodes and some more surprises, such as actually having a serialized storyline, which is something that the original seemed to go out of its way to avoid. So it makes me wonder, is A New Wish better than the original series, or does it still come behind? So I want to go through my feelings on A New Wish, and how it holds up compared to the classic 5 seasons of the show. First off, the visuals. I don't want to get too into it since I did a lot of my first video, but I absolutely love it. I'm very impressed by how they did it. They managed to do the art style of the original show and do it in 3 dimensions, which is such a great translation of the style and have such great choreography and lighting. The old series really didn't have that great a style and animation. Very simple, and it's much more focused on its writing aside from a few episodes and scenes where they try to be more creative. But New Wish blows that out of the water. I am thoroughly amazed by how good this show looks, and how it takes that stylization and makes it work in 3D. It's so hard to tell what's 3D and not. But I especially love the use of lighting. This show can be so damn atmospheric and gorgeous at times, with really nice colors and shading. It can also get really creepy at times with the lighting and use of shadow as well. It's absolutely great. I've seen people say that the animation is garbage, which proves my point that animation fans don't actually respect animation. Technically that's more art style animation, but that's gotten great too. For 3D to do a super good job still making it cartoony, have a lot of squats and stretch and going off model. It's super impressive, especially with a TV show budget. It's amazing. It even uses it to get some really dark and messed up tones, which I absolutely love. Like, this show's lighting can make it look legitimately scary and atmospheric. I can't get enough of it. It even goes back to the 2D style offer, the in-universe photos and flashbacks. I love it. seeing the two mediums work together. The visuals are a real highlight of the show and one of the best parts in my opinion. And admittedly though, since it's 3D, it makes asset creation much harder compared to how easy it was in 2D, so a lot of locations and stuff are underdeveloped or unexplored, and there's a lot of asset reuse, which is a given for this type of show and is understandable. And I actually think they did a better job with it than they should have been able to, especially in a show with a premise that anything can happen. But as I get to the characters, Hazel is very much a departure from Timmy. Timmy was used a lot as a straight man in the wacky situations of the show, having a down-to-earth and cynical look on things and will loudly speak his mind when he can. He kinda pushes the line of unlikability, but luckily never go too far most of the time, especially since he's a kid. So a lot of time I'll be pretty self-serving and selfless, getting the ultimate wish fulfillment, largely because life pushes him down and wants to fight back. Hazel on the other hand is much more passive. I will say she's a lot more like a kid. Timmy a lot of times can seem too cynical and, well, emo to feel like a kid, especially with a lot of his smart aleck tendencies. And Hazel's much more goofy and upbeat in her own little world. She has childish interest and naivety. Like going to a fair and desperately trying to win a free hat because he thinks it's cool is the most accurate depiction of childhood. While Timmy's wishes are mostly done out of spite for a situation, Hazel wishes more on trying to be helpful out of naivety. She'll mostly try to help other people than herself, but largely underestimates the situation. She feels like an answer to Chloe, who is also an optimist with fairies but much better executed. Hazel still has multiple flaws due to her childishness and impulsiveness that keep her interesting and likable as a character. And it's nice that we have a main character different from Timmy in that regard. She's a dork and I love her. And admittedly, there is a problem where people say Hazel isn't miserable enough to get fairies that I'll kinda get into later, but the series never established how miserable kids need to be to get godparents. The whole most miserable kid on earth thing was only a thing for Fairy Idol, as the show never set up a misery limit. Hell, Timmy didn't got fairies mostly because Biggie put anchovies on his pizza. Hazel in the beginning of the show had plenty of things to deserve fairies, after moving to a new place, social alienation and bullies, and being without her brother she's close with for the first time. So it makes sense on why she would get fairies. Also technically since Cosmo and Wanda effectively chose Hazel themselves after the first adventure in Fly, which I think is one of the show's best episodes. Speaking of which, now the show is in a weird case of being a reboot and continuation. There's a lot of changes with the show, but it still takes place about 20 years since the original with a new location and characters. But the Fairly Oddparents would be nothing but the titular Fairly Oddparents. Cosmo and Wanda are back with a few notable changes. For one, they moved on from Timmy, and Chloe technically, and went through a 10,000 year retirement, traveling back in time until going on a misadventure with Hazel, which reinvigorated them back to the godparent business by choice. Now, they've gone through a notable change. As I said, the original show had a very cynical sense of humor, and it's actually a double-edged sword. A lot of the time it's used for good jokes and satire, making the show stand out from other shows of the time, rooted in primarily over-exaggerate the problems of childhood. But it can often get too cynical for its own good to the point of mean-spiritedness. And Cosmo and Wanda from the first season were a very loving and ditzy couple, very silly and even saying themselves that they're two half of the same idiot. But as the show went on, that attitude died down more, and now it's becoming the butt of I hate my wife jokes, with Cosmo constantly joking how much he hates his marriage and Wanda becoming a stereotypical naggy wife. Yeah, it really didn't work as one of the biggest problems with the prime seasons, and if anything, Poof's introduction helped reinforce their marriage back. Luckily, news changes that so much, as Cosmo and Wanda are back to being a loving couple again, which is so nice to see after so long. They're back to an adorable and loving couple. You love to see it. Wanda has also changed as she's dropped most of her nagging nature and become a lot more of her ditzy season 1 personality, having plenty of goofy moments and being dorky with her husband again, back to the two halves of a whole idiot idea. And a lot of people, including myself, are all for this and makes the characters and dynamics much more fun, even if admittedly this can go into characters acting very dumb for no reason. But for a character like Cosmo, this is par for the course.
There's always my tearjerker idea! Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles!
Cosmo, who cries watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Okay, two things. One, Cosmo's canonically a TMNT fan and that's incredible. Second, hey, so you clearly haven't seen that much TMNT. I wonder what Cosmo saw that made him so sad. So yeah, I love what they did with the duo here, especially with the later attribute. There's also Hazel's parents, which I can now get to more solid characterization. Now, Timmy's parents have gotten an extremely bad rap lately where people consider them absolutely terrible. But if you watch all the prime seasons, you'll notice that it really depends on the episode. Sometimes they love him, sometimes they hate him, entirely depending on the plot if they want to make a joke. Luckily, Hazel's parents have much more consistent characterization. They are constantly loving, but a few times can ignore Hazel, feeling a bit more of their misery, but not going nearly as far as the Turners did. Hazel's dad is pretty goofy, but he's not a dumb dad stereotype like Mr. Turner. He's an eccentric paranormal investigator, which is a concern for the fairies, but weirdly enough it isn't as big as a problem as you think. If anything, they get more into capturing ghosts, which makes them more like they belong in another Butch Hartman show. But seriously, they never actually reference Danny Phantom, even when it's a ghost vacuum, disappointing. But as you expect, they're very dorky and goofy, and gets along very well with his kids Hazel and Anthony. And he can be pretty funny at times with his eccentricities.
I'm here to save you! Where are the ghosts?
They're all gone.
But come on, for as bad a dad as Mr. Turner can get, Mr. Wills can't compete with Dinkelberg. Like, that is one of the best running gags ever made. There's also Hazel's mom, who's much more down to earth and has a businesswoman mindset. So she's a lot more confident, helps to give Hazel a lot of advice, but at the same time gets so into her work that she ignores her. And there's even a pretty nice episode about it. I do love the contrasting personalities between the two, and how there's an episode dedicated to showing how it reinforces their love, if anything. Honestly, it's just nice to have parents with consistent characterization in the show. There's also some new characters. Hazel has a few friends, namely Jasmine and Sky. She gets during the first few episodes of the show. Jasmine's a little dorky and has a running gag of being really bad at singing, and Sky's a de facto cool kid complete with a radical haircut and skateboard. Unfortunately, I felt they were kind of undeveloped as characters because they really didn't have that much to them. Like, especially compared to Chester and AJ from the original, had very defined characterization and tropes, and a lot more involvement in plots. Granted, Sanji and Omen were pretty underdeveloped, but they were literally referred to as backup friends. I don't know, I do hope that there's a season 2 they get more attention and development. Speaking of Dev, there's of course Dev Dimmadome, son of Dale Dimmadome and grandson of Doug Dimmadome. Now, I thought it was going to be the standard rich bully character like Randy Bucks at Plenty, just to pick on the main character and make them feel bad, shoving their wealth in their face. But Dev surprisingly becomes practically the second most important character and the most developed one. Okay, you can kill me for that. But one important thing the show does is that it has a serialized story format, where there's strict continuity and plot development between episodes, which is incredible since the original seemed to go out of its way to ensure that it doesn't and keep its characters as one-note as possible. But yeah, Dev does turn from a one-note bully character to slowly opening up and revealing his insecurities, and then becoming one of Hazel's best friends, even in a godparent of his own I'll get to later, which is freaking amazing. Again, the show really hadn't had a character arc like this in a season, aside from like maybe Mark Chang, who's surprisingly the only character who had a multi-seasonal character arc, and also making him a god kid, which is something the show rarely did go in depth. It's one of the things I wish the original show went into more, especially some of the established one-time god kids, so I was gonna see how other kids would use them. But they actually do have a complex emotional journey and development, and their relationship with Hazel that goes back and forth. It's one of the best and most interesting aspects of the show. I seriously had to applaud them on it. I loved it. Other side characters include Principal Krenz as one of the other antagonists of the show, pretty much taking the role from Crocker as the antagonistic and mean school faculty member, but doesn't play too big a role. Kinda funny that she's the opposite of Waxo-Plax in the original series, who was actually a nice principal for the most part. I'm glad New was refrains from making the same stupid fat jokes though.
Not over until the fat lady votes. Can the principal vote?
Speaking of which, there's also Mr. Guzman as the main teacher, who doesn't have too much to him. He's a lot like something Crocker was, but is also kind of an adorable dork, so I gotta mention them.
Not now, Goose!
Did Hazel just give me a really cool nickname?
I also have to mention Fake Hazel. Like, they're made as a stand-in for Hazel when she got into Wish hijinks, but it seems to like weirdly gain sapience and extensionalism later on. It's just freaking insane. Though I have to mention probably one of the biggest draws of the show. A New Wish Valley takes place about 20 years in the future since the original show, at least going by Dale Dimmadome being what looks like 12 to 16 and now being able to have a 10-year-old son. So it also brings back a bunch of characters from the old show, now much older and new jobs and roles, which is so fun to see these characters in the future they'd have. I mentioned Dale, and he really was just a plot device in his first appearance, with his dad getting much more attention in this show and fanbase obviously. I mean, he was just a kid enslaved by Vicky to make lemonade. But now Dale has a much more prominent role, turning into a greedy tech mogul who practically owns the town and will stop at nothing to make a profit. He also completely neglects Dev and only treats him like a statistic, which is the biggest source of his misery and eventually giving him berries much like Remy did. They also do acknowledge a lot of his past in the show, implying what looked like slavery was really just some job, and I doubt Vicky actually pays them anything. It's amazing that the show took a look at this emaciated, enslaved kid and said, hey, what if we made him like the worst person ever? But hey, I'm surprised they even remembered him at all. Speaking of Vicky, she also makes a return in the series. You could do a lot with Vicky and what her future would be, but in this show she's taking the role as a birthday princess, but acts as forced the party goers to make stuff for her online store. Which is much more like the earlier season Vicky where she wasn't just a complete sadist. Though this does seem kinda low scale for Vicky, but it still works and fits her, even if she really didn't age that much in 20 years. Oh wait, she has a wrinkle now it works. I do like how they acknowledge Vicky's one weakness as he can't risk her reputation having adults see her crime. Which should have been a thing more in the original, but the adults were so dense so you could do it right in front of them and not care. It's so nice that it's more obvious here where even Cosmo and Wanda point out they could have used that a long time ago.
Adults must be her kryptonite. That would have been really handy to know a couple decades ago.
Also that Isama thinks that Dale owed him for starting his economic empire when he worked at her lemonade stand. But also, AJ makes a surprise appearance in an episode where he finally gets to know his actual name. Apparently he now founded and runs the Gainax Institute, which is really nice. I figured he would have been a sort of Steve Jobs tech mogul, but this works too. Though, my god, look at him, little dude got the kingpin treatment. But also with him, Mr. Cryer comes back now as a janitor in the Institute. And while he has visibly aged a lot more, ironic since in Secret wish he was the only character not to age in the 50th year of time skip, he maintains his fairy hunting obsession and sporadic nature, of course jumping at the opportunity to go after Cosmo and Wanda again. And if you're wondering how you can see them, Crocker became an exception through the humans can't find out about fairies in later seasons, so it's not that big a deal. Though apparently I forgot Timmy, which is kind of weird considering everything.
Kid I used to terrorize with a pink hat. What was his name? Tubby, trombone, trebuchet.
Speaking of which, Timmy does not appear in this season, even though he was originally going to be in the episode instead of AJ, which I think was best changed. Like, if you're gonna bring back Timmy, you gotta make it worth it. It's gotta be big. Though it makes me wonder how other characters will show up and change in this future. Is Chester going to embrace his father's legacy and join the baseball major leagues as the second worst player ever? Is Trixie going to become a famous movie star or supermodel? Francis would be kind of hard to say, same with Sanjay and Elmer, they can be pretty much anything. What are the balls to bring back Chloe? I'm actually not against it. There's also the fairies, which largely didn't change, like Jorgen's pretty much exactly the same but less dumb like his finderization in later seasons. There's also Cupid, who I refuse to acknowledge the same person because I hate that redesign so much. Like, I hate it when Cupid's just depicted as a gross old guy in a diaper in media, it's so bad. But also the Tooth Fairy came back, thankfully still in the original design, looks great in the style. But there's the big one. Halfway through the season, they brought back Poof, now named Perry, because apparently Poof is a slur in other countries, it's weird. But yeah, this kind of broke the internet a bit. I'm so happy they did this, and it's the biggest evolution of a character yet, since Baby Poof was critiqued for barely being a character. Now keeping it sort of, oh yeah, cartoons, Cosmo type Phil Hartman energy, but countered a lot with them trying to deal with Dev as a godson and how insufferable he is. Yeah, Dev is kind of the worst god kid ever, and Perry's pretty much neutral, all this being his first god kid, and their dynamic can be summed up as,
Shut up, Twink!
there's also the fact that Cosmo and Wanda smother him so much and are so proud of him, it's absolutely adorable. I live for this dynamic and the show's existence is validated just for this. I love the design too, it's a perfect mix of Cosmo and Wanda, the hair and outfit design. It's a million times better than whatever the hell Butch wanted to do with him before. He's no longer a freaking spear. He's also like the only competent person in the show now. Also should mention Foop, or IRIP now, the one villain later seasons like to use way too much. Though unlike Perry, he retained his shape in adulthood. It was needed. Can you imagine the Tumblr sexy man craze that would happen if he had a normal head? It's an averted disaster. Luckily it's a lot less oversaturated, but it's still important having a unique dynamic with Dev and an important role in the serialized story. I can't believe that's a thing now. But let's get a bit into another thing, continuity. So I knew this is in a place where it's spiritually a reboot, but it's in continuity. As I said, it feels like they changed a lot of the aspects of the show, but it's still in the same world with old characters coming back. But it does reintroduce and handle a lot of aspects of the show. Of course, there's the rules, you know, stipulation for wishes, but there's also the classic rules where Cosmo and Wanda can't reveal their identities to other people, or else Hazel will lose them, which is a thing in a few episodes. But I'm mostly saying this because even the show forgot about this in later seasons. They also brought back Hocus Pocus, which I'm actually surprised considering it came out in season 8. But also those weird things where fairy rule is apparently off limits to god kids for some reason. I really wonder why. Maybe it was things like Timmy, but that's pushing it. They also kinda confirmed Sparky exists, at least by text. Sparky was entirely written out of the show after season 9 with no explanation, and no one cared to have him back, so it's up in the air if he'll actually come back in any regard. Though Hazel also names their trash can Sparky, which is pretty on the nose honestly. The show has a lot more respect of the continuity than honestly the original did a lot of the time. They also brought back magical backup as a thing, even if they changed it a bit. In the original, it was the stakes in the same game where Timmy wished everyone looked the same because the first would be unable to find their god kids, as their magic would build up and they would explode to confetti, as Cosmo wanted to find to undo it. It also kinda came back in Fairy Idol, but there it seemed like less of a deal since they showed you can easily switch a fairy back to normal. But here they added more stages to it and make it more like actual death. I'm happy that they brought it back at all and treat it like more of a thing. There's also a thing about Hazel being miserable enough to get fairies. I said it before, but the show never really set a limit. Hell, sometimes kids would get fairies after a few hours of feeling bad. It made sense in the beginning when she was struggling and adapting to school and without her brother, but as the show went on due to the serialized nature, Hazel did pretty quickly get accustomed to her life. She got new friends, the school seemed to like her, even Deb stopped being mean to her when they started to become friends. And also, kinda spoilers, but like 2/3 of the way through the first season, Anthony comes back kind of unceremoniously. Like, I really thought it was gonna be an end of season inclusion, and would have Hazel have everything she needed and potentially lose Cosmo and Wanda, but it weirdly didn't. Like, it doesn't acknowledge that Hazel got basically everything she needs after, which I do think should have gotten more acknowledgement. Granted, in the next episode, Radical on the Racers, which is one of my favorites, does show that she's still kind of mostly bothered by all this. I just wish this problem got acknowledged, as even the original acknowledged that if Timmy wasn't miserable in his life, he wouldn't get Cosmo and Wanda, and it's partially why the show's continual cynicism works, since it gives a reason on why Timmy needs them. It's not too big a deal, but it can be to others. Though I do have one problem, it's a bit in the finale. Skip here if you want to be completely unspoiled. So Hazel somehow makes 1,000,000 wishes, which I do find complete BS, since it feels like she only had fairies for like at most 4 months, and it took Timmy literally 50 years and 8 seasons at that point to get that milestone. I know Secret Wish is kind of a crappy episode, but still.
Did you say something about a 1,000,000th wish? No god kid has ever made 1,000,000 wishes before.
It just doesn't make sense as Hazel doesn't wish nearly as much as Timmy does. And also apparently get a rule-free wish if you do, which is even worse since Timmy didn't get one. Like, it would make a little more sense with the Fairyversary muffin, but it still feels contrived. I would say that's something that felt more reasonable for her to get. Which I should get into the writing. Now, to me at least, there's a big distinction between the writing style of the original and New Wish. As I said, the original show has very tightly knit together plots for the most part, with a focus on witty, sharp humor and cynicism, with a lightning fast pace between scenes and jokes. Like, the only other show I feel comes close is The Amazing World of Gumball. New Wish does feel very different, as it largely lacks that type of cynicism. It's not like it's completely non-existent, there are some parts that also over-exaggerate the problems of childhood, but it's a notable difference when you watch. Now, on the one hand, people might consider it better this way, as even I'll admit the show oftentimes got too cynical and led to really poor taste jokes and scenes. Though, granted, some are funny, which is how they got away with it.
We've come for the creature you call Mom.
No! You have a perfect civilization! Why would you want to add a woman to it?
Though it can make the show feel, I don't know how to say it, like, too soft? I don't want to sound mean, it's really hard to explain, but sometimes it can feel a little pandering in places, almost like later season writing. Again, it's probably just me and I'm being too harsh, but it can come across in places. New Wish does have a much more laid back and calmer attitude with a slower pace and less about making jokes as much as just setting the scene and writing the plot. And again, that can work for some people. Some people would much prefer a more mellow and laid back show. I'm just saying there's a stark difference. But I do think that New Wish does suffer a bit from how the plots are structured. For the most part, the prime seasons of the show are very sharply and smartly written in terms of how their plots are arranged and structured, usually always having things come full circle and establishing stuff that pays off later, even if it's often formulaic. New Wish doesn't always do this, and its plots are often less unified and kinda messy. I'll give an example. Beach Bum is a great episode I feel to show how tight the show's plots can be. So Timmy's at the beach and getting bullied by Francis and wishes to be the strongest guy on the beach. But before that, we see Mr. Bickles is collecting crabs for his new restaurant on the beach, and that there's a sea monster patrol active. So he wins for a bit and gets Trixie's favor, but Francis comes back for revenge. However, Mr. Bickles gets the sewer monster to open his restaurant, making Timmy even bigger than him to the point where he's too strong and is hurting people, and causes Cosmo and Wanda to lose their wands as Mr. Bickles also gets them for his restaurant. Before he can save them, a whale washes up on the beach, which the Sea Monster Patrol checks out and makes Timmy even bigger than it, which was foreshadowed with a comment from Wanda earlier.
Unless a whale washes up on shore, you won't get any bigger.
And he gets seaweed stuck all over him, making him look like a monster, and getting the attention of the Sea Monster Patrol to try to attack him. And Timmy has to break into Mr. Bickles' place to save Cosmo and Wanda before they get eaten, and then had to fight through the all-out assault of the Sea Monster Patrol trying to kill him and desperately get back to normal. Luckily managing to get the wands back to reverse the wish, and gets one last revenge on Francis by covering with seaweed and getting the Sea Monster Patrol to go after him. Now the episode is pretty out there and crazy, but the plot is pretty well unified. It made sure to introduce things before they used them, and evolved the premise continually, naturally building off itself and combining until it goes all out in the end. So I'm going to compare it to an episode of New Wish, 1500 Minutes of Fame, where Hazel was to be famous to win the class superlative after Dev bullies them and her own insecurities. Where apparently this means she gets 15 minutes of fame despite it not being her request, which summons Father Time since it's technically a time wish, and allows them to have 1500 minutes of fame, or roughly a bit over a day of fame. And she of course becomes famous in the school and everyone fawns over them, but Krentz is spiteful at her fame and finds it distracting and threatens to transfer them if they don't stop it in the next hour. Hazel tries to unwish it, but Father Time stipulates their agreement has to be 1500 minutes. But a new character, the Nick of Time, shows up to save the day like she usually does, and gives Hazel a loophole to change her minutes to New York minutes to speed it up if she can act New Yorky enough. So Hazel solves it by pulling off a really fun Broadway musical number while being a New Yorker. Seriously, it's really nice, check it out.
Pack your bags, we're leaving town. Headed to the city where it all goes down. New York, New York, New York.
Which successfully loopholes it and turns to their normal, whereas he still won an ironic superlative award anyway. Now, it's not a bad plot by any means, but you can definitely feel it's kind of messy and incongruent, with a lot of things not exactly flowing naturally and randomly getting introduced. Now, I know it's unfair, there's a lot of episodes in classics that are better and worse rated than that one, and same with New Wish. I'm just saying that from what I've seen, it follows a similar pattern. Again, New Wish's plots can be perfectly fine. It's just I find them weaker than how the Prime seasons did them. New Wish also falls into a weird problem where it oftentimes invents a character for a wish that causes problems. Now, the original did this too, but it made sense. Teeth wishes go through the Tooth Fairy, love wishes go through Cupid, sleep wishes go through the Sandman. But New Wish has a trend of inventing new characters to oversee wishes when it's not needed, like making up a science fairy or a music fairy. It does kind of feel a little contrived. But in a New Wish's favor, as I said, it does something the original doesn't, by having much more focus on a serialized structure. There's plenty of episodic ones, but there is an actual continuity and time progression between episodes that gets acknowledged in a plot with multiple character arcs that gets developed over time. Something that the original show went out of its way to avoid most of the time. And I bring up how the show is building up Trixie to be a much more progressive and compelling character beyond her surface, until the show ignored all of that and kept her as a shallow Valley Girl stereotype for the rest of the run. That actually might make for a good video. But yeah, to me, I get much more into serialized story structures, which makes me much more interested in New Wish's episodes, but it's not to the point where it's completely serialized like other shows. You can watch it casually just fine. And as I said before, it does have a lot of great character moments that actually remain consistent and not change in the next episode. It's undeniable that New Wish definitely has a lot more heart than most of the original, and when those moments hit, they really hit. Leads to some of my favorite episodes of the franchise. Like when they reach an emotional height, they surpass all of the original that mostly floundered in that regard. So there's a few pros and cons to how New Wish writes that I feel is pretty subjective. It really comes to how you feel about what you want from this show. So I'm actually gonna do a little thing and quickly kind of rank my thoughts on every episode in season 1. Skip if you want to go unspoiled. Also, all the placement can be interchanged, just FYI. Number 36, Growing Pains. Hazel was to be a teenager, but apparently goes through a fairy form of puberty called pasta puberty, where she gets pasta growing out of her body. Okay, that just doesn't make sense at all, and it felt so random it doesn't work. Even worse that she now has meatball pimples and spaghetti armpit hair. Oh my god, I can't stand it! It's like just the amount of body dysmorphia that makes me completely disgusted and makes me want to vomit. Especially when she Spider-Man's with it, it's so freaking gross, I can't look at this episode, I hate it. F tier, why'd they make this?
Did that come from my armpits?
We didn't want to let it go to waste.
Number 35, Dinosaur in Dimmodelphia. Hazel brings a baryonyx named Barry to the present and makes it talk and tries to find a place for it in the modern day. Honestly, it just felt really aimless and the plot kind of felt non-existent, especially at the end where they do everything they could and barely connected it. It's also one of the episodes where they can literally wish a solution, but they don't, which is usually a pretty bad sign. Title card makes it look like Hazel was trying to track down a dinosaur, which I felt would have been a better plot.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Number 34, Trial or Hair. Getting to more okay episodes, this one Hazel wishes for magic hair that's a diva and splits on her own. The main problem is that her hair is pretty annoying, it doesn't really do too much. I think Moon Girl did the same premise much better. Hell, even season 6 did in Hurricane.
This is not what I meant when I wish my hair had spirit.
Number 33, a new development. Hazel also work with Dev on a scavenger hunt and wishes they can understand each other more. This is the thing that lets Hazel and Dev become friendlier, which is very important. It's just that the episode itself isn't too interesting that gets it this low.
But you still got friendship as a prize, for what that's worth.
Number 32, Cookie's Court. Cookie gets jealous Cosmo and Wanda stole Hazel from her as a god kid and frames him to get them fired. Interesting premise, though I do feel the court scene got kinda boring and a little contrived. Love biblically accurate Cosmo and Wanda though.
Cookie, I find you guilty of being careless with magic, framing innocent theories, and wasting my time!
Number 31, Trouble with Rivals. Hazel wishes to be a master musician to heal the band rift in their school with help from the music fairy, or new music fairy for some reason, who is another case of the show introducing a contrived fairy. They also got rid of music and refused to give it back for no reason. Fine episodes, don't think it was too great. Love some of the atmosphere of the music world, and it randomly brings back Anthony.
Dreams are important, right everyone?
Number 30, the Wellsington Hotelsington. Hazel tries to impress her new friends by turning her apartment to a 5-star hotel. Perfectly fine episode, didn't think there was that much to it.
Quinn, Jasmine, are you are sick and
Number 29, Mind the Gap. Hazel wishes for a tooth to fix her gap, and brings back the Tooth Fairy, who gives him a magic tooth who's a brat. It kinda goes the standard route you'd expect, but it's nice to see her again, so it gets some points.
Use teeth in new mouths.
Oh, yay! Yay!
Number 28, Dig a Little Deeper. Hazel wishes to find a special rock highlighting her love of geology, and gets wrapped up by unexplained rock creatures. Nice to see Hazel's geology passion come back, I just wish there was more to it. Man, they fell for a long time.
Did it, Hazel?
Rock!
Number 27, Mystery She Wished. Hazel investigates the disappearance of the old landlady and her new neighbors and frames it like a detective story. I don't think the mystery and plot was that good, but it really was my favorite by the visual and amazing cinematography. I love it. Still better than Where's Wanda. I don't like that episode.
You had your suspicions, and I respect that. There's nothing a doomsday prepper respects more than paranoia.
Number 26, Teacher's Pal. Hazel wishes she could be friends with her teachers and makes them just as immature as her. It's only the 3rd episode and our first real look at a Wisp-based storyline, and it's fine, but it's not anything too special regardless. Number 25, Pizza Pizza.
Pizza.
Dev refuses to help the class get a pizza party, so Hazel wishes for a trio of alien brothers for help to use pizza to make a peace agreement between them. Yeah, that's really freaking weird and puts me off. The episode though is not too bad, has some good jokes, Dev development, and Dev destroying all of Italy was funny.
I'll be out in 30 minutes or less.
Number 24, 28 puddings later. Dev hoards the school's pudding supplies. Hazel wishes everyone can have some, which inadvertently makes them so addicted they turn into zombies. Now, it sounds more interesting than it was, as it doesn't take too much advantage of the actual premise and it comes a little too late. Though the visuals seriously elevate this episode. I love the creepy tone and lighting are so much, and it shows how good this show's use of color and shading can be.
Besides, I started this, I have to end it.
Wait, how did you start it?
Number 23, Potato by Hazel. Hazel wishes she can eat only french fries. Now, you might think it's gonna be a retread of just desserts, but it really doesn't go that direction. She randomly turns into a potato, but needs to go to Mother Nature to fix it. Again, another separate character to deal with a wish. Mother Nature though has a really great design, I love this shot. But the episode just kinda stopped to explain the moral halfway and kinda talks down to, which I found distracting. I mean, the original had plenty of moral-based episodes, even just desserts, but it was more integrated through the actual narrative. And then it kinda makes a separate climax because Hazel did something stupid for no reason. Though she was willing to kill herself to fix it, like, Jesus! And remember for thinking Potato Hazel is really adorable? Like, look at her, she's so cute! Also, I love that French fry song.
So much more than a sign.
Number 22, Stinky Dinky. Hazel wants to clean up pollution and brings a dumpster to life, though the real interest comes with Del Dimidone's scheme to make people buy fake green products for his profits. He's really the most interesting part of the episode, and our first real look at him and his goals and treatment to Dev. Love the callbacks to the original show, and that plane battle is fun. It does do a bit of that problem these episodes have, where it gives a magical solution to real life problems that actual people can't use.
And don't worry about the trash you create. Dinky always has room for more. Isn't that right, Dinky?
Number 21, 1500 Minutes of Fame. Already talked about it, but yeah, episode's fine. Nice little wish gone wrong episode. Plot can be better, but that New York song really puts it high up here. It's really nice. Also, Flappy Bob jump scare.
If I can make it here, I can make it everywhere.
Number 20, Hazel Wells and the Multiverse of Jenkins. Hazel tries not to be awkward with the kid named Jenkins and gets father time to give her some time loops to reset the event, but keeps on making it worse to impossible levels. Normal time loop shenanigans, but it has a good moral. I love the expressions here, and the montage where she cycles through her different models was cool.
Say it's not a big deal again, Wanda. Say it.
Number 19, Weird Science. Hazel waits for a potato battery to work and accidentally ruins all of physics. Pretty fun episode, especially how the world has changed with the wish, but doesn't go all the way with it.
To actually learn the science. Is that it? Man, that was easy.
Number 18, Patty Possum's Party Playground. Hazel wishes a Chuck E. Cheese style animatronic was brought to life as they get way too clingy and refuse to let them leave. Neat episode, but I really love the creepy tone and again, super great sense of lighting and the jokes are pretty good too. So I think Patty's design really doesn't work in 3D like Jesus is like a tough puppy character. Also obligatory FNAF joke. Number 17, Haunting of the Wells House. Hazel and her dad watch a fairy movie that releases a sort of ghost fairy actress Hazel needs to return before a paranormal investigator father reveals fairies. I love seeing Hazel and her dad bond with this and frame like a paranormal investigation show, and Jordan posing as a priest was funny. Kinda wish it was spookier though. Also no Danny Phantom reference.
From guest star to...
I don't know what that means.
Number 16, Battle of the Demosonian. This is a big episode where Dev and Perry finally meet Cosmo, Wanda, and Hazel as both learn about each other's secret, which is really nice. They also gotta stop an ancient witch named Vuzalia from taking over the town with the undead. Honestly, a pretty nice episode, though I think Vuzailia's design drags it down and I wish its fun climax happened sooner.
Let's show this middle American demigod how we do things in Philadelphia.
Number 15, Department of Magical Violations. Second episode of the show, where Jorgen forces Hazel, Cosmo, and Wanda to prove their worth or he'll reassign Hazel the cookie, a fairy who doesn't care for her god kids, just gives them things he thinks are good for them. It actually commits to the idea and has them fail work, really goes to the difference and worth of Cosmo and Wanda legitimately caring for their god kids, and I love to see it. Just wish the DMV stuff was a bit more interesting.
I said make a wish. This child made like a bajillion of them.
Number 14, Stuck in My Head. Hazel wants her friends to get to know her better and wishes up a literal museum in her head to go to, but winds up having to deal with her insecurities. It's a fun and sweet idea with her friends getting closer and getting to know about Hazel more through her battling her insecurities. Wish the mind word had a cooler design though.
I want you to know everything.
Number 13, Worker Magic. Hazel wants more attention from her mom and she wants to be her new assistant. It's a pretty nice look to her mom and their relationship and has some really sweet moments reinforcing her love for Hazel. Also, Cosmo and Wanda pretending to be businessmen was funny and the rest of the episode is too.
We're from corporate.
Which corporate?
You're fired!
Number 12, A Day to Remember. Hazel travels back in time and has to make sure her parents get together, fighting with Cupid who tries to get her mom's old boyfriend to be with her instead. It's a great episode premise, but weird how Hazel doesn't acknowledge that she would just die if she loses like Back to the Future. But I do love the ending a lot where they get together because they're so different, they work off each other so well and it reinforces their love. Which seeing a positive marriage reinforced in Fairly Oddparents is so nice to see. I also love Hazel's song at the end.
This is your lovely, lovely, lovely love song.
Love this joke.
How exactly do you know all of this?
Because I'm psychic?
I knew psychics were real. Yeah, no, I'm in.
Number 11, Lost in Fairy World. Hazel and Dev really want to explore Fairy World, which is now off limits for some reason, and sneak off to get to hijinks. Really nice to see Dev and Hazel as friends and see more magic locations. But Hocus Pocus looks so good here and that to survive a wish dragon that now eats the unwished wishes. Also, you cannot convince me this isn't an elaborate reference to Mario Galaxy, like, look at this, it's literally the Gobblegut fight from 2.
This is too much wish fulfillment.
Number 10, Prime Meridian Love. Hey, we finally get to know what's up with that Ruby Gilman looking fish guy in the intro. Turns out he's a popular manga character in a kind of One Piece parody. Hazel geeks out over them and wishes him to life to go to the dance with them, but of course gets into hijinks. It's one of my favorites, okay? I'm probably biased by Ruby Gilman comparisons, but it's so much fun, has a lot of good jokes, even the plot is not exactly perfect and it goes over the top a lot. Also, a lot of obligatory anime references and jokes. Love the pointless bumper reference.
Only 10. I'm not ready to commit to being a literary or literal fish.
Number 9, Lost in Founders Day. It's Founders Day as Dale holds a big ceremony as another profit scheme, but Hazel's trying to win a hat and wishes to help people, which puts her on Dale's hit list looking for an anomaly getting in his way. It's a really great episode that has a ton of dad development as he realizes how much his dad doesn't love him and goes out of his way to save Hazel. Also, the climax with the statues coming to life was fun too, but come on, it's that end that changed this show and really got people interested in it.
I'm so miserable.
Number 8, Operation Birthday Takeback. Vicky's back in the show, now taking over Dev's birthday party and forcing the kids to work for her. So Hazel, Dev, Jasmine, and Sky to work together to stop her as Cosmo, Wanda, and Perry uncover more of Dale's plan. It's so nice to have Vicky back in character, and seeing our new cast fight the original antagonist of the show is so nice to see, leading to a lot of fun sequences and jokes. Love this one.
She's real? I thought I imagined her as a baby.
Like that old Chip Skylark song that I've heard my mom play.
Never heard of it.
Number 7, Best of Luck. Perry had enough of Dev and quit as Irap takes advantage to become his new godparent and allows him to break all the rules. He uses it to cheat and get revenge on Hazel after they stop being friends. It's a really good plot that reinforces the show's serialized nature, and a really interesting use for Foop instead of being a one-note antagonist. It is allowing to deal with the pair teaming up and causing chaos is so much fun.
Back to anti-fairy world for him!
Number 6, Fairy for a Day. While sneaking to a fairy world convention, Hazel accidentally signs a contract turning her into a fairy, and inadvertently makes her own anti-fairy, Leza. So she has to get the contract back from her to reverse it. I love Leza's design, and the episode is a lot of fun in the convention. But I do have one problem, that it randomly introduces magical backup and explains it, but it's literally irrelevant to the episode. Like, I was thinking that Hazel was at risk of getting it since she was a fairy without a guidance, so she might die soon to get the contract back, or maybe when Leza sabotaged the big one, it would make the other fairies get it. But it's just like a non-issue here. At least it did pay off in the finale, but yeah, kind of weird.
In fact, nothing about you is cool. Why would you say that?
Number 5, Croc to the Future. Cosmo and Wanda are taken by the Gainites Institute since they trace magic in them. Hazel has to actually team up with Crocker to get them back, only to turn on them once they find out who they are. It's a really great premise, and it's sweet to have AJ and Crocker returning back to his old roots in a fun action sequence to save the duo. Super fun and memorable episode, I love it.
A new method has arrived for catching paranormal creatures. It has a lot of power.
And it's coming for you.
Also, I love that they actually talk about the obvious subversion set up in the old series.
In a butterfly net, which is impossible.
Number 4, Fearless. Another personal favorite episode. Hazel wants Jasmine to relive her experiences with Anthony and wants horror movie, but she's too afraid. But by wishing to make her fearless, it instead brought her fears outside of her head and into the real world that run amok. And she can't wish them away since the only way to get rid of fears is to face them. I love this episode, especially with the creepy tone and the designs of all the fears. Like, they go all out, and especially again with the unsettling atmosphere and lighting. I couldn't get enough of it. Out of all the creepy episodes, this one was my favorite and helped sell this series to me as only the 5th one. The plot's also pretty well put together too, and some interesting beats like Hazel in the face trying to relive Anthony through Jasmine being called out for it. Also, Fear itself looks to be an actual character who possesses Jasmine, has to kill Hazel for going against them. It's freaking insane. Also, Jasmine reading Charlotte's Web to get over her fear of spiders is goddamn hilarious.
Or we were just thoughts. Now we are real.
Number 3, Fly. The first episode, and man, did it leave an impression on me. I talked about it extensively in my first video, but it had a really solid plot and introduction to all the characters, and was the first sign to me that this reboot was going to be good. Very high marks all around. Number 2, Ride Icon the Racers. One of my absolute favorites from the show, where after Anthony seems different after college, Hazel wishes their board game Ride Icon the Racers was real so they can play together and rekindle their bond. I love the western aesthetic so much, and they did a great job in the world with the design and set pieces. I love how Wanda got way too into the roleplay, and it felt like there were legit stakes and suspense all around when things got too violent. Love the action and storytelling, especially when Hazel and Anthony vent their frustrations at each other, admit their faults, and getting together, reinforcing their brother-sister bond. Amazing episode, I love it so much, and one of the ones I rewatched the most. Also need a Sakura reference, which is 2 times in one season.
Because ever since you left for school, it feels like everything is different.
Well, it is different, and you're not the only one going through it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Maybe you would if you ever wanted to hear about my life now.
And I'm sorry.
Apology accepted. I love you and I miss you.
I love you, and I miss you too.
Number 1, Battle for the Big One. The season finale, and it went all out. I love it. Dev teamed up with Irap once again and hacked the Big One with his own microchip so it only powers anti-fairy wands as they take over and imprison all of Fairy World. So it's up to Hazel gathering up all her friends and wishes to fight back and save all of fairy kind. I love it so much, it felt so much like a genuine finale. The stakes were great and the build-up throughout the series really paid off. It does a lot with the concept, like having Perry nearly dying from magical backup since Dev abandoned him for so long, and Cosmo and Wanda worrying for their son's life. Dev second guessing what he's always wanted, having unlimited power. And Hazel on the spill the beans about her secret for the good of Fairy World. Even Cosmo and Wanda come back. It's been so long since we've seen them. It's amazing. I love this episode. It's got a great premise, great visuals, great plot and development for the characters, and it's the best episode of A New Wish.
Wanda, I wish you would restore Fairy World back to normal.
And yeah, when A New Wish really wants to go above and beyond, it definitely can. It took some risks with a more serialized approach, but I think it more than paid off. It made for some exceptional characterization in episodes, and it's been getting a lot of people to rally behind the show and give their support for it. And I'm definitely in there. I've really enjoyed A New Wish. But it does beg the question, which is better, the Prime seasons or A New Wish? Now, I think it's really subjective. Yeah, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I think it's warranted. If you prefer tighter writing around plots, a more cynical sense of humor, and sharp wit and comedy and pacing, then you'd probably prefer the original seasons. But if you prefer the new visual style, slower, more mellow pace and tone, light serialization and character development, then you'll probably prefer A New Wish. And I don't think there's really a problem with that. Each show covers different things, and it's really up to what the viewer wants. I really can't say one show is worse than the other. Again, the 5 prime seasons, everything after that doesn't count. Personally, I do prefer the original for the tighter writing and humor, but I want to make it very clear that A New Wish is very close up there. And that's pretty amazing for a show to get to that level to me. I mean, move over, DuckTales, there's now 2 cartoon reboots made in the last decade that are actually good. And it proves that the magic isn't gone from Fairly Oddparents, and it can move past the stigma it's got after so many bad seasons and spin-offs. And I seriously recommend you check it out, you'll enjoy it. Apparently, getting a season 2 is dependent on how successful the show will be once it hits Netflix. Please, once it does, support it, watch it, talk about it, spread the love. A show made with this much love and dedication that revived the franchise that seemed dead in the water deserves to continue. And a lot of the writers have a ton of ideas they want to use in the next seasons. And I can't wait to see what else they'll add or bring back. Are the Pixies gonna come back and take over Fairy World? How is Dark Lasers? Is he gonna come back? Are they gonna bring back the Negachin and team them up with Hair Razor? Please, I want to see that so badly. Again, please support this show as much as you can, and I hope that's the biggest thing you take away from this. You know, I ended my last video with a joke wishing that YouTube can recommend my videos again after 6 months straight. But after I posted it, my impressions actually came back. So it actually came through. Thanks, you guys, you saved my channel. You're the best.
What's your power exactly? I can put people in a time loop. Like, let me just show you.
No, don't
time
do it!
Set your clocks back.
Bro, how is he still in a time loop? Oh my gosh! Get out! Get out!